Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. I've got two guests lined up right now that I'm very anxious to have on here. Both of them have live streams that are going to be they're going to be doing later on, and so I wanted to start a little bit early. So if you come in a little bit late, you're going to have to go back, put it on double speed to get caught up on what's going on. But right now, I have Dr. Dino himself, Brother Kent Hovind, on the program, and I wanted to talk to him about this subject of the length of the time that Israel was in Egypt, because in reality, he is the one that got me interested in this subject. Several years ago, when I was just a teenager, I remember hearing a preacher say something along the lines of, every 2,000 years, there was a significant event in history. You had from creation to the flood about 2,000 years, and from the flood to the cross about 2,000 years, and then from the cross to the coming of Christ, it's probably gonna be about 2,000 years. And I remember hearing that, and it kind of stuck with me. And then a while later, I was listening to Kent Hovind, and he had said something about 1,656 years from creation to the flood. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not 2,000 years. And while I had read Genesis many times, I had never done the math myself. And he talked about how you can do that. And I went and did it. And sure enough, it was 1,656 years. And then and so I did all that. I figured it all out, thought I was smart as a teenager. And then later on, I decided, and when I was in my early 20s, I was going to do a timeline of the Bible. And I started from the beginning, and I got up till Isaac and Jacob, I think. And then I kind of gave up, and I kind of quit, got sidetracked. And then later, I found I was reading some things, and it had a timeline on there, and mine was 70 years off. And I was kind of like, what in the world's going on? And I had made a mistake on there. And then later, I went a little farther, and I got to the children of Israel going into Egypt, and I did it wrong on the amount of time they were in Egypt. I did 430 years from the time Jacob went into Egypt to the time the children of Israel left, and none of the chronologies lined up with me. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, you know what? Who cares what these people say? I got Bible. But then later on, I noticed some other things that absolutely did not jive with the 430-year idea. And I'll talk about those things later. But right now, because this is kind of the guy that got me started on it, and then a while back, he was on a program, and kind of this subject came up, and he was kind of getting hit for having the wrong position. I'm like, wait a minute, that's my position. I agree with him. I went and did some more study proving my point, and then I did a video on it. But either way, you'll hear what I have to say later. Let's hear what Brother Hovind has to say. So, Brother Hovind, thank you for coming on the program. How is everything going in Dinosaur Adventureland?
Everything might be a stretch, but God is good. Some of God's kids drive me nuts, but God is good. We love it down here. Come on, we're just north of Pensacola, 70 miles, Dinosaur Adventureland. It's amazing. It's all free. Come on down. And I'm honored to be on your show, brother. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good having you back on the program. I had you on a while back talking about your timeline of the end times, or your book, and really enjoyed that conversation. It was great. But I want to hear what you have to say about this. You're the guy that got me interested in this subject. You hold to the idea of 215 years. I think we all agree 430. It's just how we account for it, where we start the clock. That's where people have a difference. So I'm going to give you the floor, and you give your thoughts.
All right. Well, my name is Kent Hovind. I do a lot of debates against atheists. This atheist says there are a lot of Bible contradictions out there. A lot of mistakes in the Bible. He's dead wrong, and I'll debate him any day on this topic. One of the ones they pick on is how long were they in Egypt? So I broadcast on lots of different channels. They keep taking us off of YouTube, but we're on everything else. Let's see, we're on Rumble, Facebook, let's see, X. We have our own app now, KentHovind.tv, Instagram, TikTok. So go on our website, drdino.com. All of our channels are listed. We go live every Monday through Friday at 7 Central Time on our show. And at the end of every show, we have a question and answer time. If you want to call in, ask a question, please do. I don't get time to answer all the phone calls. I wish I could, but it's better just to call in to our show and ask the question. If I answer it, it might help more than one person. But anyway, we want to help, okay? They said there's a Bible contradiction between how long the children of Israel were in Egypt. Was it 215? Was it 400? Was it 430? How long were the Israelites in Egypt? The answer is in Genesis website up in Kentucky. They've got a good article about that topic. Were the Israelites for 215 years? What about the 400 or 430? Fair question. Well, there are a lot of ingredients that go into making a cake, okay? And there's quite a few ingredients that go into answering this question. Let's look at some of them here. The Bible says Adam was 130 when his son was born, and his boy Seth was 105 when his son was born. And you can go through and add up the dates given in the Bible and make my chart like I made years ago on the Bible dates, okay? After the flood, you go to Genesis chapter 11, and it gives even more dates from Genesis, from Noah up to Joseph. And we have historical evidence from Joseph being the vice pharaoh of Egypt. So we really can get history nailed down pretty close from Joseph till today. So God said to Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Well, there's the first number we got to work on. Were they in Egypt for 400 years? And God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, that they should bring them into bondage and entreat them evil 400 years. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Okay? Galatians chapter 3. Excuse me. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as to one, and thy seed, which is Christ. And this I say, that the covenant was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. Which is it? And the sojourning of the children of Israel dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. Now, the verse does not say this, they were afflicted for 430 years. The other one says they're afflicted. So it's a key point here, okay? It came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass all the hosts went out of left Egypt. So they were in Egypt for 430. Ishmael, the son of Hagar the Egyptian, mocked and persecuted Isaac in Genesis 21, 30 years after the promise was made to Abraham. The promise was 430 years before the law, like Galatians says, and 430 years after the promise, Israel came out of Egypt. So there's not a contradiction. It doesn't say they were afflicted for 430 years. Okay? So here's the lifespan of Abraham. A lot of people have done charts on this. This supposed contradiction has been answered hundreds of years ago, but the skeptics keep dragging it up, hoping they can get something to not believe the Bible. I was in a debate with an atheist one time. I said, if you chose to believe the Bible, and you said, man, the Bible's true, would that affect your lifestyle any? He said, that would change everything. I said, okay. Do you really believe this evolution idea because you have some evidence or because you like the freedom from God it gives you and God's rules and laws? He was quiet for a minute. He said, I like evolution because I'm horny. I said, every male of every species from termites to whales understands that one. There's not a reason to reject God. God created that too, you know. So they really don't. Romans chapter 1, they don't want to retain God in their knowledge, so God gives them up. So they're looking for little things like a supposed contradiction, 400, 430, 215. Okay, so Abraham begat Isaac, Isaac begat Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. All the tribe, they call them the tribes of Israel, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And he said, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Now, the 430 was when the promise was given to Abraham. Okay? In the fourth generation, they shall come hither. Once we realize, we can look at a passage and realize this statement made by Moses actually adds clarity to the situation. It doesn't contradict it. When we think of the children of Israel, we typically think of Jacob and his 12 sons. Remember, though, the promise was not made to Jacob. The promise was made to Abraham. What Moses is subtly pointing out is that the nation of Israel did not start with Jacob, but with Abraham. It reveals the nation of Israel began with him in Genesis 12. Therefore, this passage is including Isaac and Abraham in the nation of Israel. 430 years prior to the Exodus is when Abraham first lived in Egypt. There's no contradiction or difficulty. Simply put, the nation was named after Jacob/Israel, but it started with Abraham. Floyd Jones, a great preacher many years ago, concluded in his chronology of the Old Testament that not only was Abraham a member of the nation of Israel, but that 400 years of sojourning and affliction started with Isaac's weaning when he was 5 years old, when Ishmael mocked him. That's when the affliction started with the children of God, okay? This point about Isaac's weaning and Ishmael's mocking 30 years after the promise is also concluded by James Bishop Ussher in his book, The Annals of the World. So Abraham was 75. God made a promise, and he leaves Haran. That's in Genesis chapter 12. 430 years till the Exodus. But Abraham was 75 to 80. God tells Abraham his descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. That's in Genesis 15. When Abraham's 85, he's lived in Canaan for 10 years, and he takes Hagar as his wife, and she conceives Ishmael, which started the whole Middle East problem with the Muslims and the Arabs and all this. Anyway, another story. When Abraham's 86, Ishmael is born. Abraham is 100, and Isaac is born. Isaac is weaned, and Ishmael mocks and persecutes Isaac. So he would have been, 30 years old, making fun of this little baby still nursing at 5 years old, I guess. He's began mocking him. And there have been a long history of the Ishmaelites and the Israelites hating each other, fighting each other. So Abraham's 140 when Isaac marries Rebekah. Then Esau and Jacob are born when Abraham's 160. When he's 175, he dies. Then Joseph is born when Isaac is 151. Isaac at 168, Joseph is sold by his brothers and taken to Egypt. Then Isaac dies, and Jacob at 121 is made second in command by Pharaoh. He becomes the vice Pharaoh of Egypt. Joseph reveals himself to his brothers 2 years into the famine with 5 years left. That's when Jacob was 130. Jacob's 147 when he dies. And then Joseph dies at 110. These references are all here. Only 64 years pass from the time Joseph dies to when Moses is born. Moses is placed in a basket and adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. Moses is 80 when God speaks to Moses and Aaron about letting Pharaoh go. And Aaron's his older brother, but 2 years older. So on my chart, I think what Steve Anderson was griping about is, to me, it's straining at a gnat, swallowing a camel, okay? But the Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter 1, be careful about these endless genealogies which minister questions, don't strive over those things. So I think this is the complaint. They may be right. My chart may have the wrong number here, okay, because it's not how long they're enslaved in Egypt, but how long were they in. So I have here 400 years, 440 years, 430 years, okay. So Abraham, there's his lifespan on this timeline. And the other timeline I showed a minute ago is this one. That's also behind me, the big version of it, about the 6,000-year history of the world so far and 1,000-year reign of Christ. This is part of my series I did on what on earth is about to happen, the Woe series. You can get the chart about the post-trib rapture. I used to believe in a pre-trib rapture. It's not true. I did a video series on it. I did a book about it called Woe, What on Earth is About to Happen. I can show you that. Let's see right here. Whoa, what on earth is about to happen? I had to change my theology, brother. I studied till my brain hurt. I said, we're here for the tribulation, not for the wrath of God. They're different. But anyway, that's another story. So that's the whole complaint, I think, is this little chart, okay? So here we go. 1 Timothy, don't give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which minister questions rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do. Now, the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and good conscience and faith unfeigned, from which some having swerved, have turned aside unto vain jangling, desiring to be teachers of the law and understanding neither what they say nor wherever they affirm. So, brother, my point is, I think the Bible is clear enough, and this has been answered for centuries by great scholars down through the centuries. There's not a contradiction. 430 years is when Abraham goes to Egypt. Then he starts afflicting them 30 years later, when Ishmael starts afflicting Isaac. And they were actually in Egypt. Then they went back down and became slaves in Egypt for 215 years. I don't see why they make a big deal out of it, why they think it's a contradiction. So that's about all I've got on the topic, brother. It's part of my series, Seminar Part 7, question answer time. So if somebody's got an objection, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
waste
No.
your time on that. But okay, go ahead.
But yeah, no, that was I agree with you. And it's one of those deals where it's like, I was gonna ask you your thoughts on the apostates who do not hold to the 215-year theory. It's usually on the other side where they get very divisive about it and use it as like, is this person even saved that they could be getting this wrong? But I guess
Oh, brother.
when you hear people getting divisive about this issue, or not even just divisive, just genuinely disagreeing, what are the more common objections that you hear?
I say there's a much bigger battle to fight, guys. Okay, it doesn't matter. You're straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel. Just stop. That's in Matthew 23. So I don't. There's a bigger battle to fight. Okay, during World War II, we were allies with the Russians. We disagreed with them on hundreds of things, but we had a bigger enemy called Hitler. Okay, there's a battle to. Let's go fight the devil and quit arguing about this trivia stuff. There's no contradictions. I believe the Bible is the infallible, inspired, inerrant word of the living God. Now, there's some things about it I still don't understand. There are 33,101 verses in that book. I've read them all many times, and there's some I scratch my head still today. Like, what is that? I don't know. But it's not the things I don't understand that bother me about the Bible. It's the things I do understand that bother me. I'm not doing all them, Makes me a little nervous. We're going to be judged for every word. Yeah, okay. So I don't know why I think what happens, some people want to, it's the Pharisees. The Pharisees were constantly picking at Jesus, little thing here, little thing there. They wanted to feel superior to Jesus. Some preachers and some Christians want to feel superior. There's the same Pharisee attitude all over again, in my humble opinion. Just serve God, win souls. Okay.
Well, I think both of us too, we come at this, and even people on the other side, we come at this believing every word of God. We're all King James people. We believe every word of God. And to me, the reason I like talking about stuff like this, and the reason I think we're all interested, we do believe that the history of the Bible is accurate, and it is a fun thing to study, but there's areas where it's challenging. When I was doing my own study on it, and even recently, when I kind of went back and was looking at a lot of these things again, I really struggle when it gets to after the captivity, because I'm not 100% sure about where to start certain things. And then you kind of have to refer to historical documents. Problem is, we understand those aren't inspired. I remember when I was very young and just starting this out, I didn't have internet. I remember I went to the library and I found a book, on our calendar and the history of it, where it came from. And I was trying to figure out historically kind of when our calendar started and certain things. And it frustrated me because I was reading this book that I'm wanting to tell me what my position should be. It was like, well, there's different opinions on this. And it was kind of going into all these things. And I'm like, I'm used to just studying the Bible, and, we believe it. But I do think that, when it, for myself personally, as I've studied things like this, it's helped reveal mistakes I'm making and how I account for things in the Bible. And I think that's the biggest problem in this issue is I think people are what I refer to as Americanizing the Bible. There's ways that we look at things today. There's ways that we account for things. And that's not how the Bible recorded things. It's not how they looked at things back then. And so when you start putting these things together and getting all those discrepancies worked out in your mind, I think it makes the Bible more clear. And so, I would not fight anybody over this. I wouldn't break fellowship, or, it wouldn't even register on whether or not it would make me think somebody's saved or not. But for some people it does. And I find that interesting. But I've seen your presentations on this. I like it. And I just wanted to have you on to just kind of, give your 2 cents on it, just because I agree with you. And I think, like many people, years ago, all those videos and things you did, the seminars, it got people interested in a lot of things. And as I was thinking about this subject, my mind went back to some of those seminars back in my teenage years. And, I appreciate those. And so, but you have any other final words for the audience? I know you've got to go, and you've got a live stream coming up.
There's kind of an attitude or philosophy, I guess. I decided as a young Christian in 1969 I'm going to believe the Bible until it's proven wrong. Other people have decided I'm not going to believe it till it's proven right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the wrong approach. Okay,
Yeah.
you can do what you want, but there's still things I hit in the Bible. Say, oh, I don't know that one yet. I think when we get to heaven, it'll all be revealed. Like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody on the planet who understands the Trinity. I don't know anybody on the planet who knows what light is. What exactly is light? Give me a jar of it. You know, we know what it does. We use it all the time. But what is it? What is gravity? Give me a jar of gravity. To say it's the attraction of forces, I taught physics for years. I understand all that. But what is it? I don't know. But meanwhile, I'm going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Been using
Yeah.
it all my life. Okay.
And I wouldn't pretend gravity doesn't exist, especially if you're on top of a high building or something like that.
That's right.
So, but no, I always appreciate your common sense approach. And I guess on this program, one of the things that I always want to do is try to keep conversations honest and disagreements honest. Don't just assume the worst about somebody else's position. Don't straw man their position. You know, we don't have anything to gain from that. And so, you know, what many of the things that you brought up are some of the same things I had. And what I intend to do later, I want to give guests, you know, their time to say what they have to say. But I think I can prove many of the claims you make, how you are accounting for things. That's what I was paying attention to as you were going through that. I was looking at how you were accounting for things, and I believe it's accurate. And I'm gonna try to display that later on,
Okay.
and hopefully it'll be interesting. But I do thank you very much for coming on,
All right.
and you're always welcome and to come on the program. But I hope all goes well, and
Yeah.
you take
Well,
care.
brother, if you want to put my slide back up, if people want to contact me, I take calls all day and half the night. There it is. Up, can you get it up there? Oh, right there. Let's see. DrDino.com, 855 Big Dino is our phone number. Come visit us, Lenox, Alabama. We have 30 cabins. Everything's free. We'll feed you and house you. You stay more than 2 days, we'll put you to work. Whole place built by volunteers and donations. It's amazing, brother. God has been good. It's just God's kids that drive me nuts, but God has been. Anyway, thank you for having me, brother.
Yes,
call anytime.
sir. All right. Well, God bless you. Take care. We'll see you later. All right. So that was Kent Hovind, Dr. Dino himself, giving his 2 cents on the subject. And so hopefully Pastor Shelley got the link that I sent him. If you're watching this, I sent it to 2 different Steadfast email addresses that I had. And then hopefully he can jump on, and we want to allow him to get his 2 cents in here. He made a video talking about my position on it. Hey, and he accurately represented me. And we are, in our attempt to get Baptists being honest on how they address certain things, I think we are getting somewhere. We're making progress. And he basically said that I probably won't quote this exactly right, using he felt was an overly literal interpretation of the genealogies with Moses. And I am. That's true. In fact, even though I would disagree that it's overly literal, I will say I don't know how you can interpret it any more literal than the way I am. I think as literal as you can interpret that passage. I'll probably show that later. I am. In fact, you know, while I wait for him to come on, in fact, I'll show you a few slides here. So basically what we see in the Bible is that Levi, he begat Kohath, Kohath begat Amram, and Amram begat Moses. Now, I will concede there are genealogies in the Bible where people got skipped. However, the reason we know people got skipped is because they are mentioned in other places in the Bible. And so we can tell you who got skipped when it comes to that. When it comes to the genealogies where people believe they're skipping people, that we don't know who they are. There's no place in the Bible where it talks about them. And so we would have to be skipping genealogies with Levi. We would have to be skipping genealogies with Judah, and probably some of the other tribes. I've not studied those ones out. But when it comes to Levi, let me read the passage to you and show you how I am interpreting it in a very literal way. And hey, being literal is not always the way to go. We say it all the time in this program. We don't just interpret the Bible literally, we interpret it literarily. If it is supposed to be interpreted literally, that's exactly what we do. And so in Exodus 6:16 says these are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations, Gershon and Kohath and Merari. And the years of life of Levi were 137 years. The sons of Gershon, Libni, Shimei, according to their families. The sons of Kohath, Amram and Izhar and Hebron and Uziel. And the years of life of Kohath were 133 years. Sons of Merari, Malai, Mushai, these are the families of Levi according to their generations. And Amram took him, Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife, and she bare him Aaron and Moses. In the years of life of Amram were 137 years. So right there, I don't really know how else to interpret that passage other than literally. Not only does it say Levi, he bare Kohath, but then Kohath begat Amram. It says that Amram, he begat Jochebed, his father's sister. So notice that slide there. So we know, I think everybody would agree, Amram was the biological father of Moses. Jochebed was the biological mother. And it says Amram begat Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife. So Kohath and Jochebed, however you pronounce that, would have been brother and sister. And Jochebed is a daughter of Levi. It says, and so it says Amram took Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife, and she bare him Amram and Moses. And also in, where is the other place where it's mentioned? Yeah, Numbers 26:59. And the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. And she bare unto Amram Aaron and Moses and Miriam, their sister. So it mentions her as the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi. So, I mean, it just seems like it's too many specifics right there to not be literal. Brother Hovind, he also mentioned the fourth generation. They are going to come out. And I agree with him that the affliction, I believe it started with Ishmael persecuting Isaac. And if you have any questions, I will get to my detailed presentation on this, but I want to give Pastor Shelley all the time he needs. So I don't want to start in the middle of my thing. But yes, I do take that very literally. And I just, to me, it would be another reason it's hard to insert, say that people were skipped in there. It also gives the numbers of years, which is the same thing that it does in Genesis. And that's how we figure out the years. It says, Adam was 130 years old when he got Seth, and he was this old when he died. And it gives that, and we're able to add it all up. And that's how we get to the 1656 to the flood. But then also, imagine if I came along and I said, well, it was actually 2,000 years from creation to the flood. And you're like, where do you get that? I was like, well, skip generations. Oh, okay, but all right. But what is your reason for thinking that? Is there a place in the Bible that says it was 2,000 years? Are there people somewhere mentioned that we don't see in those genealogies? For you to make that claim, you've got to have a claim somewhere. You have to have something somewhere causing you to think that. You can't just say that. And I'm saying there's no reason to think any genealogies were skipped. It's just not necessary. If you follow the storyline of the Bible, it's very clear. And I don't want to go into detail on Judah, but if you follow the line of Judah, you see the same thing. There's no way to get 430 years in there, again, unless you add, say, generations were skipped. But, back to kind of my interest in this, like if this classic note study Bible that I have here, I got this back in 2006, and there's a section in here where I have the genealogies all written out, and it's going to be too hard for you to see. But after you get to Abraham, there's a whole bunch of things that were crossed out. And it's because I got it wrong. There's an easy mistake you can make when it says Terah begat Abraham. It says, and he was like 75 years, I think, and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And if you just assume Abraham is the firstborn, then you'd have been 75. The problem is later when you see Terah die and then you see Abraham leave and it says his age, that doesn't work. And so there's a 60-year difference, and it's an easy mistake to make. But the way I found out I made that mistake was a book that you heard Brother Hovind refer to, The Annals of the World. He's got a timeline in here, and I remember going through this and like, oh, I'm finally going to figure it all out. And I went through this, and I was like, he's got 60-year difference in me. And I went, read through, found out where I went wrong, and it's like, and so I had to cross all those out, and I had to take away 60 years from everything. And so then, a while later, I had the same thing with the 430 years, but then I noticed that it was doing the genealogies of Moses, because I got stubborn, and I'm like, nope, it's 430 years. The Bible says so. I am accounting for it the way the Bible intended. And who cares what all the other timelines say and all those things. But then I read the genealogies, and I'm like, you can't get 430 years from Levi to Jochebed to Moses. So again, that's a crazy thing. Moses, okay, Levi was Moses's grandfather / great grandfather. Which is kind of weird, but that's the way it was. And so, right here, we know how many went into Egypt, but we don't know how many servants went down with them and how many the mixed multitude went out with them. Would the servants and the mixed multitude be included? Yes. Yes. Right there is one of the many things people are not accounting for when it comes to the subject. Again, Pastor Shelley, if you're listening to this, I emailed you the links. Hopefully he's got them and is able to come on. I told him around 6:30, but we started early to get Brother Hovind off in time, because Pastor Shelley's got a discussion he's going to do. But yes, right there is one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they assume that all the children of Israel are physical descendants of Israel. That is simply not the case. And that right there is how you can get, I believe it was the 8,000 men in Pastor Shelley's response video that he gave. He referred to Numbers 3:27 and 28, where it says says in the Kohath, and of Kohath was the family of the Amramites, the family of the Izharites, family of the Hebronites, the family of the Uzzielites. These are the families of the Kohathites. In the number of all the males from a month old and upward were 8,600, keeping the charge of the sanctuary. Now, I will agree that if this was talking about physical descendants, then I would be like, yeah, you can't get that in 215 years. You'd probably have a tough time with just those 4 sons, unless it's leaving some out. You'd probably have a tough time getting that in 430 years. But either way, it wasn't just physical descendants. I've got a ton of proof on that. And on my last video I did on this subject, I did make this point about how not all who are of Israel, even back then, were physical descendants. Servants were included. They were the people. And I'm going to explain the distinction, because there definitely was something to the physical descendants. I will show that. I will display that. Got a ton of proof on that. But what people do is they read in Exodus chapter 1 where Jacob goes in and it mentions the 70 souls, right? And then they go later on when they leave, and I probably won't quote this exactly right. I believe there was like 600,000 men. And it's, yeah, you're not going to go from 70 to 600,000 men in 215 years. I don't even know if you would in 430 years. I don't know what the birth rate would have to have been, and that maybe it's possible. I've not done the math on that, but let me just say that no, it was 70 souls that came out of his loins. 70 that came out of his loins. But without a doubt, many people went with them. In fact, I would go as far as saying it was probably thousands that went with them. and I'll show you some numbers that we see in the scriptures that would show you why I would think that. And a lot of times we just get the wrong idea when we're reading the Bible. We go to the scriptures looking for proof of something we've already decided is true, rather than letting the Bible tell us what's true. And when you do that, you can kind of miss the storyline. You can miss the point. And so whenever you go to the passage and where it mentions the 430 years, I think it's in Exodus 12, and we're going to go there, I'm going to show that's super easy to explain. Again, the problem is people clearly went to that scripture, thinking only timeline. But no, let's let the scriptures tell its story, and you'll see that the story that it's telling does not fit the way you are applying that timeline. And so, but at the same time too, there was something to the genetics. And I'll show you what that is, but it wasn't everything. And that's one of the things I've been trying to get across to dispensationalists, is that this Israel thing, this Jew thing and everything, it was never just a genetic thing. It never was that, but they've made it all about that. Here's where the genetics mattered. It mattered concerning the Messiah, because the promise God made to Abraham was going to be fulfilled through someone who was going to come out of the loins of Abraham. So, but if anybody has any more questions about that, says Exodus 12:48 talks about a mixed multitude coming out of Egypt with Moses. It also says that anyone who became an Israelite must be circumcised and keep the Passover. Yeah, if you go and you see, I've got it somewhere on here. I've got a ton of notes all over the place. But if you go back and you read the story of when God gave the circumcision to Abraham, God told him to circumcise all that was in his house. It wasn't just his physical descendants, all who were in his house. It meant something to be of someone's house. It meant they were under your authority. They were a servant, but at the same time, they weren't necessarily going to like receive certain inheritance. And those are the main ones that we're seeing in the genealogies. If you go through the genealogies, which I get it can be kind of boring reading a lot of that stuff, but those things were important because these were the ones receiving possession in the land. And obviously those things are going to go to more physical descendants. And so I haven't done the math, but I know I'm talking. This guy here, he loves me on Facebook for some reason. But yeah, I haven't done the math on what the birth rate would have had to have been, because I don't need to. Okay. Do you understand that, Matt? I don't need to do a birth rate because I am well aware of the fact that it was not strictly a genetic thing. The servants were included. In fact, the Bible tells us that Abraham, when he went to go rescue his brother Lot, that he went and in fact, in Genesis 14:14, when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Abraham had 318 men born in his house that was just the fighting guys. They were all part of his house. In chapter 17, well, and let's look at 15 first. Genesis 15:2, and Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abraham said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in mine house is my heir. Eliezer of Damascus was going to be the heir before Isaac came along, because Abraham didn't have any children. But he's got all these possessions. He's got all these servants. It's going to go to somebody. He had chosen Eliezer of Damascus. And, but no, God said, no, I'm going to make a great nation out of you. And it's going to be from somebody that comes from your loins, Abraham. The promise that God was going to fulfill, what God was going to accomplish, was going to be done through someone who came from the loins of Abraham. So the Bible absolutely does keep track of that messianic line. And it does keep track of even in the other tribes, because they were the ones that received inheritance. They had possession of the land. It remained within their families. And so it was never strictly a genetic thing. And that's the most important thing. And so we've got Pastor Shelley on the program. And we are, like I said, while me and him have our issues with each other, hopefully tonight we can have a productive conversation, no dumpster fires. Pastor Shelley, thank you for joining me tonight. I don't know how much you've caught so far, but
sorry, I haven't heard anything.
you haven't heard anything? Okay.
We're getting prepared for our show, so I'm kind of eating a burger and stuff too. But I appreciate you having me on the show, and I didn't hear if you already explained. I don't know if you can give me like a 30-second postage stamp.
Yeah.
So how the 8,600 children of Kohath works.
Yes. So the way I just explained that is I showed that the children of Kohath, or the tribe of Kohath, did not just have to be physical descendants. I was actually going through several places in the Bible where we see people who were a part of Abraham's house that were his servants. And they were a part of the people. They were a part of the covenant. And Abraham had over 300 trained servants born in his own house, just the ones for fighting. We see also in chapter 17, all of Abraham's house was circumcised, including his servants, because he was authority over them. In America today, we often, and this is where I said I was confused in this at one time too, until I realized, wait a minute, being the children of Israel, being of that nation, it was never strictly a physical thing. It was about being under an authority, a part of a covenant. And so we have, and so we see that there were hundreds in Abraham's house, 300 just for fighting. In Genesis 26, verse 12, it says, then Isaac sowed in the land, received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great, for he had possessions of flocks, possessions of herds, and a great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. So even though Isaac didn't have any children yet, I believe at this point, he was still he had Jacob and Esau. He only had those two, but he was still a very great man because of all his servants. He has all these people that are in his house that are loyal to him. And then in chapter 27, when after Jacob steals the blessing, it says in verse 37, and Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants. Now, who are all these brethren? Well, it's the servants, and because they were a part of his house. And that's the same concept we see in Galatians.
Do we see any of those? I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that some of the 8,600 men that were in the census of the children of Israel are not purebred Israelites, that some of them are servants.
Yes.
Do you have an example of a servant of Abraham actually going with those 70 into Egypt? Seems like all of the 70 are strictly related to the sons of Israel. And of course, I would maybe grant their wives are not necessarily from the same family, but are any of the servants or men counted in that 70?
Yeah. So no, because in Exodus, it specifically says when it's talking about them going into Egypt, there were 70 that came out of the loins of Jacob, because there was something to the genetic, ones of Israel, because of certain promises that God made. God told Abraham, the servant's not going to be your heir. It's going to be one that comes from your loins. That's the one. It's going to be somebody who physically comes from you that I'm going to use to make a great nation out of. But all of these servants were a part of his house under his authority. And Isaac would have received all of that was Abraham's, including the servants. And then what we're seeing there with Isaac's blessing, that Jacob is going to be over all his brethren, meaning the servants. And in Galatians 4, it talks about how a servant is no different than a son, while he's a child, even though he is the heir.
How is somebody of the tribe of Levi or the tribe of Judah when they're a servant?
Because I personally believe, and the Bible does not specify when this took place, but I believe what obviously would have happened is that Jacob, whenever he is blessing his children and giving them certain inheritance and things, that he probably split the servants up between them. And by the time you're Jacob and they're going into Israel, there's probably thousands. I mean, you had hundreds during the time of Abraham, and then you have God greatly multiplying Isaac. And so I personally, it's the same thing too. We see later in the Bible where it talks about those who dwell, strangers who dwell in the land, they would become a part of whatever tribe they were dwelling in. And because it was never about just genetics. Now, the genetics mattered when it came to, like I said, receiving certain inheritance. And that's why, and those are the people that we see focused on in the genealogies, because even when it's going through the genealogies, I mean, it doesn't give a ton of names. It seems like it, but considering the fact that you've got 600,000 men, we're mainly the way, and this seems offensive to us as Americans, you've got like your royal line, and then you've got like your servant class is what you have. But I believe it's the servant class, whoever they were serving, they belonged to them, and they would be a part of that tribe, and they would be numbered with them when it's referring to the multitudes. But those people wouldn't receive inheritance. So
people are really pissed about the volume of my mic on your show. I don't know why, but I don't know. I don't even know if we can fix that. I think my crew's trying to turn me down a hair, but
yeah, I can't do anything about that. Hopefully it's fine.
Hopefully it doesn't sound too bad to you, but
it sounds fine to me.
Here's the thing. I think that sounds absurd personally. Like, I've never heard that interpretation. And this is not an argument that we're having, I guess, on the age of, or the time that they're in Egypt is like not a new argument. I'll grant that this is an old argument that a lot of people have made, but I've never heard that the children of Kohath are actually servants. I think most people, even Answers in Genesis and a lot of those people are just saying, no, they just exploded and had that many kids that quickly. I find that that's mathematically absurd.
That you think that's absurd? So who were Isaac's
think it'd be mathematically, I'm saying it's mathematically absurd to think that in the time period from Moses to Mount Sinai that you have enough time to generate that many people. That's what I'm saying.
But not if they included the servants, though.
I mean, again, even if you include the servants, I haven't really thought about it because, again, like I said, I've never heard that explanation. Even mathematically, that would be a pretty high servant to child of Israel ratio. That I don't know how many servants you're assuming came with them into Egypt, perhaps even, but you still, I feel like it's a huge math problem as far as just the number of people.
Well, no, not if with Abraham he had over 300 just for fighting, and then if it multiplies even more with Isaac, and then by the time you get to Jacob, I mean, a lot of time has passed. It easily could have been thousands that went into Egypt. So I'm just saying that would account for it, because who would have been these brethren of Jacob's that he was going to rule over?
I don't see Jacob having all these servants that you're alluding to. I mean, he had obviously some handmaidens that he married.
Well, when Jacob left, Isaac hadn't died yet, so he wouldn't have received them yet.
But is there any text that shows Jacob or the children of Israel having any servants that are not part of the children of Israel
say
while in Egypt? I'm just saying, is there anything in the Bible that says there was servants that were not part of the children of Israel while they're in Egypt, traveling to Egypt? I know when they leave, it says a mixed multitude went out with them. And I get that. But it seems like when we read that text, and I don't know if we can pull it up on the screen or not, but it's saying there's like 603,000 children of Israel, like the men, not including the women or the children. And then like it also says, and a mixed multitude went out with them. I've always read that as like that's a completely separate group of people, not with the 600,000 children of Israel. I think the children of Israel are strictly children of Israel. Otherwise, it just doesn't really seem to make very much sense.
Well, if we account for things like an American, because in America, we're kind of obsessed with race. We've made Israel all about genetics. That's just not the way it was in the Bible. And how did people become Jews in Esther? In Ezekiel, when it explained how people could become a part of the different tribes, if being a part of a tribe was a genetic thing, then how does you just dwelling in the land all of a sudden make you a part of that tribe. You can't change your genetics, but it was never about genetics. It's about authority. That's what, and that's one of the things I've been showing on podcasts in a lot of different areas. And this is why I think this is important to understand, because, in American Christianity that's heavily influenced by dispensationalism, obsessed with the Jews, obsessed with race, we've made being of Israel a racial thing. But no, it was an authority thing. And and in the Bible, we see that there were hundreds that were in a part of Abraham's house. Did that mean they all lived under the same roof? Well, unless that was a huge house and he dwelt in tents. But no, it's just showing those were under his authority. And we have just a very different system and structure today. I mean, in our American society, as soon as your kid's 18, he can leave. We have no authority over them anymore, unless we have like some major inheritance we can hold over their head. And most of us don't have anything like that.
Let me ask this though.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an article, a video, anybody that you could point to that actually has the same position? Like, I've never heard anybody make this argument. I'm not saying that I know everything.
I know. I've read it in commentaries and things like that I've looked at. I don't have any of those with me, but I'm just saying you see the servants in the Bible all over the place, examples of that. And I mean, what happened to all those servants that they had when they left Israel and went into Egypt? Did they just leave them behind, or did they go with them?
I'm just saying, you're saying you've read in commentaries that of the 8,600 men counted in the census for Kohath, that they're not actual children of Kohath, that they're actually just servants. You're saying you've read that in a commentary.
No, I haven't read any commentaries on that particular verse, but just showing that the explanation for some of these large numbers is that it wasn't strictly just descendants of Jacob. It also included the servants and the people that were in their house. So if you are a part of Abraham's house, you're under his authority. And then if Jacob, when he is giving out the inheritance, if he gives certain servants to Levi, and Levi is in charge of them, they are part of his house. They would be of the tribe of Levi, because there's nothing in the Bible to indicate that it was ever strictly a genetic thing. It was an authority thing. And where we see the genealogies and why they're important is because they were the ones that would receive inheritance. And it would be like me. If I was some rich, wealthy guy and I had a ton of money and I owned a town or something like that, I would, obviously I can only run so much on my own and with my offspring. But if I can recruit servants, loyal servants, people that, are committed, I'm going to need those people to be able to take care of a large part of land. But when it comes to an inheritance, I'm going to be favoring my biological children over servants. And they're the ones that are going to receive an inheritance. If I was given Sterling and Rock Falls, if it was all mine, I'm going to probably give my firstborn Sterling because it's a bigger one. And then my other son, I'm going to give him Rock Falls. And then, I might split the servants up, and they're all a part of Jason's tribe and Tommy's tribe. And that's just what they did back then. So I think when it came to the children of Israel, I think you had like a royal line, for lack of a better term, that had the inheritance and all that. And then you had like your servant class. And that's offensive to us as Americans.
Seems like the Old Testament law says when someone would sojourn among them and wanted to actually join the tribe, that they would become like a full part of that tribe. There's no like second class citizen. Either you're sojourning, meaning you're just temporarily dwelling with them. You're a stranger, like you're going to go back, or you're just temporarily dwelling, or you just become a citizen. It doesn't seem like they have this second class citizen status. Additionally, I feel like I'm kind of impressed how you consistently come up with positions that no one's ever heard of or no one else takes. I asked Grok AI just out of curiosity. I said, does anybody believe that of the children of Kohath, the 8,600 that were mentioned, that any of them were not biological, that they were just servants? And it says virtually nobody today. It couldn't point me to anybody that does. So obviously you do.
About that, specifically about the children of Kohath. Now, if you ask Grok, when it came to the children of Israel, is there anybody that believes they were all only biological? that, because that's important too. Because I was also looking up online too, trying to find
we
people
both
who
agree
believe
that the Bible says a
430
mixed
years, and I couldn't
multitude
find
went out
anyone.
among them.
Say that again.
We know the Bible says a mixed multitude went out among them.
Right.
And obviously, Joseph is marrying the priest's daughter, the priest of On. So obviously, from a mother side of the equation, there's tons of mixing. Obviously, the children of Israel themselves, like none of them are marrying their sisters. They're obviously all marrying women from somewhere else. So obviously, there's going to be something mixing in with the children of Israel. But from a patriarchal perspective, from like the lineage of the father, it seems to trace, for the most part, the children of Israel, I would say like the vast majority are biological. I get that in the future, and when we talk about post-Exodus, it mixes up more and more and more. But it seems to be biological for the most part to start out with.
Right, because when they're leaving the land and when they're receiving inheritance, again, it's going to the leadership. It's going to the people that are in charge. Again, all the people, all the servants, they're all a part of Israel. They were all expected to keep the covenant, but they all would have been a part of a tribe. And so this mixed multitude, were they just not in any tribe?
I believe it's mostly Egyptians. It's mostly Egyptians that ended up going out with the children of Israel because they recognized, hey, this is the true God of the Bible. Egypt's been destroyed. And so they want to go out with them. Could have been could have been the midwives that recognized, hey, like, I want to go with this group of people because, the Egypt's dead. Like, I want to go with these people because they keep birthing, they pop babies out like crazy over here. So, yeah, obviously a mixed multitude went out with them. I'm not saying that none of them had servants, but Abraham's rich. Like, Abraham is the exception. He's not the rule. Abraham is not the typical experience for a normal Israelite. He's extremely wealthy. The guy is not going to be like your typical average child of Israel. So it would be weird to assume, oh, well, he has 300 servants, so therefore every children of Israel has 300 servants. Like, I think that's absurd. I think that most of them are enslaved. It's weird to think that the slaves just have this horde of servants. Like, that would be weird. It's never brought up. It's never talked about. Like, if I had 300 servants, nobody. I'm not going to go out by night and gather straw to make brick. Like, I'm going to be like, hey, you guys are going out there making straw for me because, like, I got 300 servants. Like, it just seems like the narrative is just even more absurd to think that the children of Kohath are servants than even what Answers in Genesis suggests, that they just started popping out 12 kids each every 10 years or something.
So let's be clear about something, all right? Let's not, it doesn't help you out if you're claiming I'm claiming something I'm not claiming. Okay, yes, Abraham had 300 servants that were just for fighting. I'm not saying each person had 300 servants. I'm saying all of those servants, though, if they would have stayed in his house, if they'd have continued having children, that amount, the servants would have been growing too, because they would have had wives, they would have had children, they would have been serving Abraham, they'd have been serving Isaac, they'd have been serving Jacob, and they would have gone into Egypt with them. They'd have come out of Egypt with them. And I think and so the question is, even you agree, there were probably many from Egypt, and I do too, that came out with them. Did they ever assimilate into the tribes and become a part of the tribe?
Again, the law gives provision for people to join tribes, so it stands to reason that law wouldn't even exist if that wasn't a reality. Even the law specifically gave provision for servants to basically go out free at the year of Jubilee or at the end of the 7 years, and so I know that the law is in the future. But it's supposed to be like just how you would behave yourself. So people doing those kind of things prior to the law is possible.
I really need to know too who these brethren are of Jacob's that he is going to be given as servants.
Which passage are you referring to? Are you talking about when Joseph has the dream?
No, in Genesis 27, it says, and Isaac answered and said to Esau, because I'm claiming this isn't a biological thing, it's an authority thing. Behold, okay. I have made him, Jacob, thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants. So according to this, Jacob had a whole bunch of brothers that were his servants. Are these biological children, or are they people that were born in Isaac's house?
So you're talking about the blessing from Isaac unto his two sons, Esau and Jacob. And verse 37, and Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I have made him thy Lord. So he's saying he made Jacob Esau's Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants. Yeah, but I think honestly, this is a prophecy, because if we think about Esau and Jacob, they're nations, right? Jacob's obviously Israel, Esau is Edom, and so Edom ends up becoming subservient to the children of Israel. So I believe that's what it's talking about. I do not believe this has anything to do with, quote, their personal servants or their personal assistants or something like that. I was struggling because maybe I'm just ignorant of some verses or some passages. I just don't even remember just all these servants traveling with the children of Israel into Egypt.
Yeah, again, because it only mentions in the genealogies the ones who came from the loins of Jacob. And obviously the servants didn't come from his loins, but it did. But at the same time, we're very focused on the ones in the Bible that came out of the loins of Jacob, because it's going to be somewhere in there that the Messiah is going to come from. But without a doubt, a lot more than 70 went into Egypt, but it was only 70 that came out of the loins. And see, this is where we often apply our modern ways of thinking into the scriptures, and it's wrong. And in Galatians 4, it says, now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, deferreth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. And it's explaining the heir. And so if you are a servant in someone's house, you belong to them just like a child belongs to you. But if you are a biological child and you are the heir, there's a greater importance that you have. But while you are still a child, you're just like servants. You're no different than them. And they are. And that's why I think too, Jacob or Isaac referred to them as his brethren, because I believe Jacob, or I keep getting mixed up, Isaac would have had all the servants that were his father's in his house. And I believe that Jacob is the one that received them. When Isaac is about to pass off the scene and he's looking at all of his house, that's as many.
Yeah, but doesn't Jacob just leave the whole family?
I
mean, doesn't Jacob just leave and go and serve with Laban? Doesn't seem like he has any servants with him. Doesn't seem like he has anything. He's basically just poor. And then he basically leaves Laban, and all he has is his two wives, his children, the cattle, that's the ring straked, and everything like that. I'm not saying he didn't have any other servants with him, maybe, but I don't think they're coming from Isaac. In fact, I would say it's possible that Esau has all the servants. I mean, we don't have any indication that Esau wouldn't have just basically inherited all of Isaac's servants, and they just were working with Esau.
What you're missing though is when Jacob leaves, Isaac hasn't died yet. In fact, he lived to be 180. It was years later before Isaac finally died, which is when he would have received all that inheritance. So he might have had some servants with him, but he very well could have gone to Laban alone. But even while he was with Laban, God blessed him, multiplied him. And when he left Laban, he might have gotten some of his own servants when he was over there. The Bible doesn't tell us, because again, they're not the focal point of the main story that the Bible's telling.
They're so not the focal point that they're never mentioned.
They're mentioned.
Like, we're talking about things that are not mentioned. I asked for a verse that, okay, show me the verse that has the word servant that's talking about the people that came with Jacob into Egypt.
No, it doesn't for them, but it does with Isaac.
So show me Jacob's servant. But we're talking about Jacob.
Right.
Show me where Jacob has a servant.
Wouldn't have received it until his father died.
But I'm just saying, if you can't show me a verse that shows Jacob has a servant, then we're speculating. And I'm not even necessarily disagreeing.
Servants from his father.
Where is that in what verse?
And Genesis chapter 27, 37.
But I just told you how that's Edom, and that's like a future prophecy.
That's wacky. I'm just going to tell you.
How is that wacky?
Because
What is it? Didn't the New Testament that you were
first
just
off,
quoting
Edomites
from
didn't even
Galatians,
dwell
doesn't it?
with Israel.
Doesn't the Bible tell us that Edom and Jacob, or at least in Romans, it's like these are nations that are in your womb? That was like the symbolism that chapter is actually supposed to be significant about.
Right. And Esau,
It was a future prophecy about Jacob. It's not a current event.
but Esau went and started his own nation, same as Ishmael. Ishmael, he did not receive inheritance with Isaac, and God made another nation out of Ishmael, and it was the same thing with Esau. Esau did not go with Jacob, did not follow him, and Esau was not a part of that covenant. Edomites are not a part of the covenant that God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Edomites are they became a separate people in a separate nation. So
this conversation's so boring. Like your chat just has nothing to do with any of our conversation.
well, it's because everybody's doing. Hey guys, don't be doing dumb drama fighting. Try to keep it related. I'm not gonna be able to find any questions.
I'm sure all parties are at fault for that. But I want to ask this question because I don't want to lose thought of this.
On my side,
if there's a servant and like there's this ratio of like biological children and servants, in your mind, what is this ratio? Like you have 8,600 Kohathites. What are you suggesting is even I'm just trying to get a ballpark here. I'm not going to hold you to anything. I'm just saying, like, are you saying this is like 50-50 or like?
So I would say it started out way more servants going into Egypt than biological descendants, mainly because if Abraham has 300 just for fighting and he gives all of his servants to Isaac, and then Isaac gives all of his to Jacob, I mean, when it came to Abraham and Isaac, their wives were not very fertile. It's not until Jacob you start seeing a lot of children. So I think minimum hundreds go in to Egypt with Jacob, only 70 from the loins. But I would say it's more likely to be thousands because the Bible keeps talking about how God prospered Isaac, God prospered Jacob with their possessions. And when you look at the amount of possessions they had and how few children they had, it would have been hard to take care of all that just with the biological children. You better believe they have the servants. And again, that was how things were back then. You were a part of someone's house if you were a servant. Eliezer was a literal heir of Abraham, even though he's not a biological child.
So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand what you just said. Are you saying that you feel like there's maybe more servants to children of Israel ratio wise?
Starting out for sure. But I imagine.
What about by the census though? You got Kohathites. Like what's I'm just trying to understand, how do they get 8,600? Because that's a big number considering, I mean, if we talk about Aaron and Moses, I mean, specifically Moses only has 2 sons. We have Aaron, 2 of his sons, Nadab and Abihu, die like almost immediately. So he only has 2. You look at some of these other guys that are being mentioned, like Issachar, he has like Korah and a handful. So, I mean, you're only talking about 2 or 3 people. I mean, in fact, one of the censuses, it's saying specifically in chapter 4, Numbers chapter number 4, I think it's like 2,200 men, and it's ages 30 to 50. So like you'd have to have just like in 50 years time, just like 2,000 men. That just seems like a lot if you're going with a very literal, overly literal genealogy of basically Levi. Like no skipping is what I'm trying to say. Right. Like no skipping between Levi and then Kohath and then Amram and then Moses. And you say like there's no skipping at all. There's not a lot of time there. No. From Moses to this 30-year-old marker where they're saying there's 22-something hundred men that are being generated. So again, if I were to believe your theory based on these numbers, it almost sounds like it would be like 90-some% servants. Just because I'm saying like in Numbers 436, it says there was 2,750. So there's 2,750 that are specifically between the ages of 30 and 50 only. So only between the ages of 30 and 50 that are coming specifically from the Kohathites. And this is going to be 50 years if you think about the timeline of Moses being 80 approximately when he's on Mount Sinai to this 30-year marker. That's only 50 years time. So how do you get 2,750 men between the ages of 30 and 50?
Yeah, you can't biologically. I'm saying, and that's why I don't believe it's biological. I think the
Well, wait,
servants
just for
are
a second,
included.
though. If you can't biologically, and I've never even heard of your other theory, wouldn't it seem absurd, at least to me, if I've never even heard your other theory or even considered it?
No, because I think you have kind of a narrow area of places you listen.
But again, I typed it into Grok. I said, "Does anybody have the viewpoint
Yeah,
that you just
about the
told me?" And no one else does.
Kohathites. That's too specific of a thing. You're focusing on just one verse, and if somebody wrote a commentary explaining all that, you need to be a little more broad in that. And that is, are there other people who would agree that when it comes to the number of people that came out of Egypt, that it was also including servants, not just descendants? Or that probably wouldn't be a good way to work. You could do it this way. When it talks about these 600,000 men that came out, are there people who believe that that was all physical descendants of the 70 that went into Egypt that had come out of the loins of Jacob? I don't think anybody, I guarantee you're going to find plenty of people showing that no, servants would have been included in that. And so as far as that ratio goes, even if it's a huge number, it's not that far-fetched. If Abraham, one man, has over 300 just for fighting that were born in this house.
Again, I
we
think it's
underestimate
extremely
how great
far-fetched
he was.
because I just brought up I brought up this point earlier. You're not addressing it. Abraham's extremely rich.
Yes.
Abraham is an exception. Abraham is someone that's going to have a lot of servants potentially. No one else is going to be like this.
Not Isaac.
It's not like Reuben's going to have 300 servants and Issachar is going to have 300 servants and whatever. Like, there's no indication of that. In fact, I'm also saying, let's just say Isaac inherited all of those servants, right? He's got 300.
He did.
There's nothing in the text saying that those servants then went one more time to Jacob. They could have gone to Esau. They could have walked away. They could have died. Like, there's nothing in the text saying that.
But
the Bible doesn't say Jacob brought any servants with him.
You don't think they told all their servants they had to be celibate and couldn't marry? They're going to be growing. Their families are going to be growing.
I'm just saying they may not exist. Like, Jacob went to Laban and labored for
Right.
what
Yes.
was it, 2
Jacob
decades or
is dead.
something,
He
21
came
years or
back
something like
after
this.
Isaac dies. Where did all those servants go after Isaac died? They would
Could they have gone to
Jacob.
Esau?
No.
Okay.
No, he lost his birthright.
Yeah, but that was like a spiritual prophecy, though. He didn't
Well,
stop being the firstborn
yes,
son.
Right. Because these people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not only are they going to receive a literal land and all the physical things.
I mean,
but
Jacob
there's
just
a great
ran
spiritual
away.
promise that's going to come from them too.
Jacob ran away, right?
Mhm.
He's just gone for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't the servants just either walk away or just start serving Esau?
Not if Isaac's alive.
Okay, but Isaac. So you're just saying all of the servants just went to Jacob.
Yes.
None went to Esau.
Yes.
Based on what text?
Based on the one I read in Genesis 27:37.
Wow. I just don't see that. You asked me earlier. I still think that's talking about Edom. I don't think it has anything to do with.
So did Edom ever become Jacob's servants and under his authority, or were they their own nation?
Absolutely. Edom is subservient to Jacob. It's like mentioned in the Bible multiple times.
But did they ever join? Did they ever join? And did they ever become under his authority? It seems like they were fighting the whole time.
Obviously,
and they even had their own inheritance, and Jacob's was much better. God did way more for Jacob than he did Esau.
Sure.
Jacob received a better
Obviously,
land.
Jacob's the one that got the blessing.
Right. Yeah, and they were separate nations. Just like Ishmael and Isaac were separate nations.
I mean, Doeg the Edomite is a servant of Saul. Is he not?
What's that?
Is Doeg the Edomite not a servant of Saul?
Yeah, he was a servant. Or I think so.
Would that be a fulfillment of the Edomites being servants? Okay.
No, he could
go
just
to 2 Samuel. Go to 2 Samuel chapter 8.
Let me be clear about something too. I've had Ruckmanites on when it comes to other subjects, kind of do the same thing. This is all about how you account for things. I believe people from other groups and nations and tribes were always able to become a part of the people of Israel. And so, yeah, Doeg the Edomite, if he's a servant of Saul, he's not serving Edom anymore. He's not a part of that nation. He's a part of Israel now, but he's an Edomite.
Doesn't matter. Go to 2 Samuel 8:14 ends this discussion. 2 Samuel 8, verse 14 says, and all they of Edom became David's servants. This is just a constant theme in the Bible that Edom is subservient. 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 14.
Mm-hmm. Right. So did it stay that way, though?
But I'm just saying this is a fulfillment of that actual prophecy, that the Edomites were going to be subservient to the children of Israel. They were smaller in number. They didn't get the promised land. And of course, at times, obviously, the things are always shifting and changing. I get that. But this is a fulfillment of the prophecies that the children of Edom are going to be subservient to the children of Israel. And this is what it's talking about.
Right.
This is what is fulfilled in that particular passage. It's not about Jacob taking 300 servants with him or whatever number, it doesn't matter the number, but just a horde of servants with him into Egypt and then them outpopulating the children of Israel. And that's who actually went out from Egypt. No, I believe that the children of Israel are really the children of Israel.
It wouldn't be outpopulating the children of Israel. They are part of the children of Israel.
Yeah, but again, if we take this, your video that I watched, and I didn't watch all the big video, I watched the shorter video, but you're saying, hey, it's Levi, Kohath, Amram, Moses. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I'm just sticking with that thought. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm focusing on the Kohathites, because specifically Moses is from the Kohathite family. It's going to then say, hey, they have 8,600. Mm-hmm. Hey, in fact, even specifically, if we go to ages of 30 to 50, more specifically, it's saying, hey, they have 2,700. And a lot of people, all kinds of skeptics and critics of the Bible and whatever, they point to these things and say like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and oh, this is a contradiction and whatever. Mm. So there's been countless articles and people arguing about this, and Answers in Genesis has articles all about this, and Ken Hovind has a position on this, and there's tons of people that have different theories. I've never heard what you just suggested on this show tonight. Okay, I'm not saying that no one else doesn't believe that.
It's not really an argument. Again, I was trying to find people who believe the 430-year thing. Like I've got Usher here, which is what many people use. If
Charlton Heston movies got it.
They use Usher, chronological Bible. It uses the chronology of the Bible. Also has the 215 years.
It's the majority position, but that doesn't prove anything.
430. I agree, but you guys like to bring up the fact if you're the only one with this position. And I'm having a hard time finding people who believe the 430-year position. So we at least concede I'm with the vast majority. I'm just actually explaining how they could get to that number. I'm saying if many people are failing to account for the servants, okay? Because obviously that's not the only proof. That's just a way that, again, that's a way you would get that number. If it's not strictly genetic, if it also includes those of their house, meaning servants. And if those people are also multiplying, then you could easily get that number, considering how great Abraham was, considering all that he had, he gave to Isaac. Isaac was also great and was blessed. Jacob he did leave and maybe went by himself. It appears that way. But either way, even while he was by himself, God greatly blessed him and multiplied him. And then later he leaves Laban, and I don't remember the exact spot where Isaac died, but he wouldn't have received all that until, Isaac passes off the scene. It was many years later before Isaac died. Isaac lived to be 180. So I'm saying that's how to account for the number. With my view of it just being Levi, Kohath, Amram, Moses, there's no problem if you include the servants, is what I'm saying. So a question I have for you, because you represented me accurately when you mentioned, I think you put it overly literal way of interpreting that. And honestly, I don't have a problem with you saying that because I don't know how I can interpret that any more literal. But when you read that passage and it talks about, I can see if I can find it in front of me, but it gives too many specifics. Levi bears a daughter, Jochebed, and then
that's not
it
exactly
talks about
how it's
Moses.
worded. That's not exactly how it's worded, but
Yeah,
it says that her mother whom she bare to Levi, I believe is what you're referring to.
Yes.
And I just think that the word Levi there could just be tribe.
Because right. And that was the question I was going to ask you.
It's not the person. That's how I would interpret that.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Okay, here it is. So yeah, let me read this, and I want to ask if just
the Numbers 26, I believe.
Yeah. So in Numbers 3:27, and of Kohath was the family of the Amramites. No, let's go to that's not the one.
I think you're thinking of Numbers 26 verse 59.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, and the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi. And so you would say it's a daughter of Levi, meaning of the tribe of Levi.
Yes.
Whom her mother bare to Levi, not Levi the individual, but her mother bare to the tribe of Levi.
Yes. And
she bare Amram. So do you believe that Amram and Jochebed are in fact the actual parents of Moses?
I mean, I have no reason to believe that it's not.
Okay.
I think I'll admit that this is a little bit difficult of a passage.
Yeah.
For the 430 viewpoint. Okay. Yeah, right. But again, I think when you look at the big picture, it has to be true that there's something skipped because of just the number. And again, I've never considered your servant theory. So okay, but I'm just saying if they are biological. Just if they're biological, there's no way that there's not some skipping just because of the sheer volume.
I agree. Yeah, I agree 100%. If they're biological, it can't happen. There's no way.
And there's some skipping in the Bible. I mean, you have the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. You have a few generations skipped, and it even explicitly says 14 generations, which it's actually more in another genealogy. Right. So then it seems like, okay, maybe some of our understandings sometimes are a little bit off.
Right.
When it talks about Kohath, right? When it talks about Kohath in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, it says some of his sons, and it's mentioning other people. It says Aminadab is his son. Okay, well, that's not mentioned. But then it also says that his son is Korah, which we know from the Bible that it's actually Issachar's son. So it's like Kohath, Issachar, then Korah. But in 1 Chronicles chapter number 6, it sounds like it's just directly a descendant of Kohath. So you actually have an example of a clear genealogy missing some things, having some gaps, as it is possible. Secondly, with Kohath, you have mentioned Korah in 1 Chronicles chapter number 6 as being a son of Kohath, and he's not a direct descendant. He's actually a grandson, possibly even more skipping. So I would just point to those texts and say, hey, if there's some skipping here, seems probably more reasonable, more likely that there's skipping in these genealogies. And I'm not going to deny just clear verses that say, hey, the children of Israel were sojourning for 430 years. I mean, that's just what the text says.
Right.
It doesn't say 215
how do you account
years.
For that, though? How does the Bible account for that? And I'm gonna go there here shortly. But before I do that, though.
I don't mind having this conversation, but I do have to drop. It's not too far in the future, so I just want to give you that pre-warning if there's something you really want to ask or say.
What I'm going to do is, after you're done, I'm planning on going through Pastor Anderson's thing he has on it, and I'm going to show that, because again, we all agree the sojourning of the children of Israel is 430 years. The question is, what did that look like? How do we account for that? And so and this is, again, I don't get emotional over people who disagree with me on this. I like to talk about it. I think it's an interesting conversation. I
want to clarify something too, especially for your audience sake. I don't think this is a doctrine to get emotional about either. So like any comments I made about you were not because of this specific discrepancy. Obviously there's lots of people that have. To me, it was just a culmination of, man, I feel like there's just been a lot of things that I strongly disagree with Pastor McMurtry on, and based on just that consistency of just always in my mind having a bad take, having a unique take that I've never heard before, it just seems like there's some issue there. And that's what I was alluding to when I said, maybe there's a lack of the spirit or intelligence or discretion or diligence or whatever.
Right. But on this issue, again, if I was going to write down 100 reasons why I didn't think a Mormon was saved, and he had your position on this, it still wouldn't even make the list.
I'm not saying you're not saved.
What? No, I'm saying what, or that they don't have the Spirit. They're not guided by the Spirit or something like that. This is an example of how to account for something. It would be like too, if somebody just gets their math wrong, I would just think, oh, they messed up or lazy. I wouldn't think the Spirit's not guiding them. I would think
but when you have verses that just clearly say 430 years repeatedly, and you're denying that, to me, there's a spiritual issue.
No, I'm not denying it though. Listen, I am not denying any verse. I'm saying, how does it account for it? And there's other ways you can look at that. And again, I think what you guys are doing on your side is you're kind of accounting for things the way we do in America today, where in America, we're obsessed with genetics, race, all that. And the Bible is more about authority and household. And you could be a part of someone's household and not a physical descendant. And that's something.
How am I obsessed with genetics and race? I'm just kind of curious.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying in general.
How's American? How are Americans obsessed with that? We
always think in terms of race, especially when it comes to the Jews in Israel. I'm not saying you in particular. In fact, because that's the thing too. The reason I think it's important, it's helpful to get this right. I think it helps prove a lot of what we say. And you guys would be in agreement with me on the subject of Israel and the Jews. I think this helps, what we teach in that area. So the thing is, I think the error you're likely to make in being wrong in this, you guys already have that right. So I'm really not worried about you guys getting it wrong. But at the same time, I think this would be helpful if other people understood it was never just about genetics. Yeah, that was a part of it, because typically the people who physically come from you, they're the first ones that are going to be under your authority. It's understood.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree, because I think that by denying the biological significance of the children of Israel and then not clearly differentiating the transitions in the law or in the New Testament undermines that position, because people think like this person's just denying reality. And since they're denying reality, of course they're going to have a wrong take on who Israel is. They don't even believe the children of Israel were the children of Israel. So to me, like if I was thinking like a Zionist Christian, I would think like, well, this guy's out to lunch, because he just denies just the fact that these were actually biological children of Israel and there was something special about them biologically. And so by kind of undermining any reality to that, I feel like you almost like make it even more difficult for people to accept the truth of the New Testament, because again, how?
I've heard New IFB many times bring up in Esther how many people became Jews.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm saying to deny that the children of Israel coming out of Egypt are the children of Israel is a pretty significant statement. Like most every scholar agrees that it was actually biological children.
But they were the children of Israel because a servant and a son, they defer nothing. Now, they're not the heir. An heir is an important thing. Ishmael was a biological son of Abraham, but he was not an heir. He was cast out of Abraham's
What you're saying is extremely significant. Like, I'm just saying, like, very few people are going to take this position that the children of Israel coming out are not the children of Israel. Well, I'm not saying that there wasn't a mixed multitude with them.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they weren't the children of Israel. I'm saying
you're saying they were not the biological children of Israel, right?
Not all of them.
Again, I'm putting aside the mixed multitude. Mm-hmm. When the Bible says, and it counts 603,000 men and calls them the children of Israel, I believe that's biological children of Israel.
Okay, I disagree with that.
And I think that it's significant for someone to say that it's not. Like, it's such a rare position. And so most people would really kind of write you off as being not serious if you had that position. I'm just trying to say just how it is.
But so while I'm here, because I imagine this is going to become very significant, why this matters. What are the dangers, if I'm wrong, in thinking that not all of the people who came out of Israel were physical descendants?
I just think it's one of those things that's like kind of a reality denial. I don't think there's like a biblical issue necessarily. I would have to think harder about it because I've just never considered that position. I'm just saying on the surface, to me, it just seems like you're just kind of denying what the text seems to be clearly saying and most everybody agrees with. And
what text am I denying?
Just how the wording it is. It's like saying, hey, these are the children of Israel. These are, of this tribe. They're of this family. This is their genealogy. Like, obviously the Jews took genealogies very seriously, and they took like who their fathers were. Like Jesus Christ being the son of David is significant. Like, it's not like just randos just coming in. Now, obviously from the female perspective, you have Rahab the harlot. You have Tamar. You have some of this like crazy stuff coming into the family tree. But from a patriarchal perspective, it is, I believe, a pure line genetically and biologically. And then once you get to Jesus Christ, then it's like, okay, we're New Testament. We should ignore genealogies. We shouldn't care about genealogies not in the Bible. Right. At this point, there's no difference between Jew and the Greek. There's nothing that's significant whatsoever. And obviously, I agree, within the children of Israel grouping, there was a lot of mixing. But look, the Samaritans at some point got so mixed that it just seemed like God just didn't even care anymore. Obviously, when we talk about books like Ezra and Nehemiah, those guys were really pissed off about, this racial impurity that was existing. So like, I'm not denying that there wasn't some mixing. But I'm just saying, like, it was a pretty, like, biological thing, I believe, for a long period of time.
Right. I agree 100% that when it came to certain promises and things, that it was biological because God made those things clear. For example, the Messianic line. I think that was a clear biological line that the Bible records because God's promise, too, was that, he was going to come from Abraham's loins. So there were certain things too, even amongst the Levites, that these were to be the sons of Aaron. So there are when it came to certain inheritance that people received, it was a genetic thing. But at the same time, when it came to being the people of Israel, dwelling in the land, serving the Lord, being of the circumcision and all that, you have many people throughout the history that became a part of that nation that were not direct descendants, and then they would marry and intermix, and eventually it wouldn't even matter. But and in the new IFB preaches that, I think, as well as anybody when it comes to that. It's just maybe you guys started later. I'm saying it was like that from the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm just saying that seems really significant. I've never heard that opinion. Sounds super wrong on the surface, to say the least. But I would have to consider it more to just even think about like what the ramifications are of that. But
let me, I do need to ask you about this verse too, because Numbers 26:59. In the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Exodus 6:20. And Amram took Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife. Now, when you have that being very specific, I mean, that's his aunt that he is marrying. And she is Jochebed and Kohath are both said to have been, born to Levi when he came into Egypt.
Yeah, I'm just saying Levi can be tribe. It doesn't have to be the person.
But it says when he came into Egypt. So you think when the tribe or when Levi the man came into Egypt?
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not sure exactly which verse you're referring to when you say.
So, I keep losing it.
You said Exodus 6.
Yeah, so it says in Numbers 26:59, the name of Amram's wife is Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. I guess it doesn't say when he came to Egypt. I thought there was another spot. I might be thinking of on Judah. I think
you're just mixing two verses there, because
I think I'm also combining when you look at the line of Judah, you had Judah.
Well, you read Exodus 6:20. Says, and Amram took Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife, and she bare him Aaron and Moses, and the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. And then you also read Numbers 26, verse number 59, and it says that Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare unto her. I mean, it says it's his father's sister to wife, but that doesn't prove that she's an actual physical, or she's not a first generation father to daughter to Levi necessarily. She could be just of the tribe of Levi. And I just think, again, if you read Exodus chapter 2, when it's just describing the story, it kind of just sounds like it's the tribe of Levi. Again, I'm just saying how it's worded. It says, and there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. That just sounds like it's just talking about people that are of this specific tribe, this specific quote house, not like direct descendants of Levi specifically. So again, I don't think that that's necessary. I think that that's just, I can see why just reading that someone could think like, wait a minute, is that saying the tribe or the person? But to me, once you look at the numbers, it starts getting really clear. Even in Numbers 26, you constantly bring up verse 59, but verse 62 says, and those that were numbered of them were 20 and 3,000, all males from a month old and upward, for they were not numbered among the children of Israel, because there was no inheritance given them among the children of Israel. So, just a few verses later, it's saying like there's like 23,000 men that are of the children of Levi, or of the house of Levi, or of the tribe of Levi. And I've just never interpreted that as being anything other than literal descendants.
Right.
And again, to me, the house of Levi's are really important. If they get mixed in, they're not allowed to be the priest anymore. They're not allowed, like racial purity seems to be a pretty significant thing for the tribe of Levi being the priests. And even specific families of Levi aren't even allowed to perform certain operations. Like if you're of Merari or of Gershon, like you're not allowed to do the priestly activities of Kohath.
Yeah, they were given a very specific inheritance and role. Yes, there are things like that. There are things that were genetic, just not everything was genetic. But I totally concede that if it has to be genetic descendants to be of the children of Israel, then you can't get it in 215 years. I think you'd struggle in 430. I'm not sure what the birth rate would have had to been, but I'll concede that. I'm just saying the narrative of the Bible, the story that we're seeing, the genealogies, because even the idea of skipping genealogies, I get that. There's examples, but we also, in the examples we have of genealogy of people who are skipped, we know who is skipped because we see them in other places. And when it's interesting too, when it's given the line of Levi, it's also giving ages in there, just like we see in Genesis, which is how we get the 1656 to the flood and all those things. And so to me, it would be like if somebody came up to me and was like, I think it was 2,000 years from creation to the flood. And I'm like, it doesn't add up. Like they skip generations. Okay, do you have that person, that generation somewhere recorded in the scripture that we can look at? And, so that to me, I can't just accept that because you need it to be 2,000 years. And again, if we need it to just be biological, then we would have to assume skip generations, people not included and all that. I just don't think we need to, because I don't think that's how they accounted for things in the Bible. When I see the children of Israel, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all a part of the same covenant, the same inheritance, the same promise. And I believe all those who are of Abraham's house were a part of that, that all those servants continued being a part of that. And so, when you get to Exodus 12, I believe Exodus 12, and this passage threw me too. Where's Exodus 12 where it says the sojourning? I want to show you where people kind of
sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. Yes. Seems pretty straightforward.
Right. Well, let me read it to you again. Okay. and let me tell you how you are accounting for this verse, and let me tell you how I account for this verse. Okay. Because I think we all agree with this verse.
I'm thinking that they actually dwelt in Egypt for 430 years, and you actually count all the way back to Abraham when he wasn't actually in Egypt.
Yes.
Well, the Septuagint says that, so
So let me read what to you and tell you what I'm reading. It says, now the sojourning of the children of Israel, and then it mentions who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years.
The who dwelt in Egypt is just a side note. It just has nothing to do with the fact that they were sojourning.
I think so. And let me show you. I'll show you why. All right.
That's hilarious.
Well, laughing and saying it's funny is not an argument. But again, if you want to laugh, that's fine. But mockery doesn't really prove the point. That's a way you can have fun with the base. But we're trying to prove a point here. It says, now the sojourning of the children of Israel. I've got some verses too that talk about the sojourning. And when it came to God making that promise with Abraham, God told him they were going to sojourn 430 years. I think the sojourning started with Abraham. and with Isaac. They were all referred, and to be a sojourner means you're dwelling in a land, but you don't have inheritance, you don't have authority, you're a stranger, you're a pilgrim in that land. And that was the reality for all the people of the covenant. And to separate the people of Israel from the people of Isaac and of Abraham, I don't think it works, because they all have the same covenant, the same promise. I've got a long thing I'm gonna try to do later, kind of showing that and how the Bible words these things and how it connects all of them. But to me, that's what I'm reading there. I believe that is just summarizing the sojourning that took place, and I believe Abraham and Isaac are connected with it, because the people of Israel, the children of Israel, the people of the covenant.
Okay, but
they're
wait a
part
minute.
of the same covenant. Abraham, Isaac.
I don't have much
here.
time, so sorry I'm interrupting. But in Acts chapter 7, verse 6, when Stephen brings this up, he says that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage and and treat them evil for 400 years.
Yes.
I don't see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in bondage in that period of time. So I feel like that's a total just basically just face palm on that particular verse as well.
No, it's not.
So, again, I would love to continue this conversation. I have to drop off because we're having our show on something else here in a minute.
This is more entertaining
Then what? I mean, hey, I have to give you credit that every time I ever have a conversation with you, I hear something I've never heard anybody believe ever before. So credit because I've never and AI and all commentaries.
You got to get out.
No one has ever said that I can find a resource online that the children of Kohath were mixed of servants.
I never even use that
credit
to
you.
Specific verse up. But see if you can find. I want you to go and look for places where it talks about people of Israel not all necessarily being physical descendants, but servants and people who are part of Abraham's house.
Say that. I'm sorry. Say that again. Exactly.
The Kohath thing's too specific. You need to look to see if there's any other people who have taught that the children of Israel were not all necessarily just physical descendants, that servants were also included as a part of the people and the multitude and the tribes and all those things.
All right, so I'll ask if the 600 and 3,000 were biological descendants or not.
It depends what on Grok. Here's the problem with Grok and these AI things.
Yeah, but to me, it's just the hive mind of ideas. So if people believe differently, that it'll tell me.
Well,
it says...
The problem is... Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, this is what Grok said. It said, in short, they were 100% biological descendants of Jacob. The text never suggests any non-Israelites were included in this military census, but that they were not children of, quote, Jacob in a sense of one or two generations. They were his descendants after many generations of explosive population. So again, you'd have to update Grok too, because Grok is saying that you're wrong.
But no, I'm saying that you're wrong. Right there's the problem with AI too, because again, when I've listened to people give presentations, you can tell they use a lot of AI, and it's clear there, because the problem is it said they were all Israelites. They're all Israelites. The question is, does that mean genetic? So nobody's claiming they weren't all Israelites.
I see what you did there, but again, let me read this. They were 100% biological descendants of Jacob.
Okay.
So it's not trying to use tricky language.
Commentaries, preferably before dispensationalism.
You should make a whole video of all the people that believe, or the articles or whatever, that believe that the children of Israel were not biological descendants.
Well,
I would love to see it. Put it out there.
I could potentially do that if I take the time. But what if I also made a thing showing all the people who believe 215 years? So are they just all out?
No, that has plenty of people that believe that.
Yeah.
Plenty of people believe the 215 years. I'm just saying that I've never heard anybody make your argument.
None of them have ever figured out, that it's not all physical.
They all say that they all believe it has to be biological, so they try to figure out how to pump out a couple thousand kids in just an insanely short amount of time. Yeah, that's typically what happens.
Even though they were having kids at a extreme rate, the Bible even talks about that. But still, yeah, you're not going to get it in 215 years. I'm with you there. But yeah, I'm just saying, again, I think we're Americanizing this. And that's why if you read commentaries before
But
dispensationalism,
nobody like believed this prior to America even being founded. Like if I go back,
So you've read
to
all
just
of them.
Europe, well, again, the hive mind of ideas is telling me that there's no one that believes contrary to this.
The way
And I'm
you
not
ask
saying
that, there's
literally no
way you're
one.
not going to find it.
Look, I'm not saying that AI is perfect. I use AI a lot. And I would say there's tons of times where I read AI and I'm like, that's a bogus answer. That's stupid. That's nonsensical. It's not considering all the sources that are available. I get there's huge flaws with AI,
You have
and
to
I
word it
understand
right.
that AI is limited. Yeah, I agree with that too. I also think that AI might sometimes cater the answer, to the audience. So like if they feel like you want a specific answer, it might kind of lean that way, or politically, obviously political questions are up for grabs. I mean, they're usually never right.
And you can
But
rock on.
I'm just saying AI is at least a useful tool in just telling us, hey, what opinions exist out there. Lots of times it can tell you like, hey, here's what people believe, here's what exists, as far as just what's on the internet. But again, your audience hates me, and I get it, but appreciate you at least indulging my questions here, because again, I've never heard anybody ever say that. I think it's crazy. Like, I think your position's even crazier than I thought before coming on the show.
The only
I
people
actually
who
thought it
ever
was more
say
reasonable.
I've never heard with stuff with me is new IFBers, because they listen to very few sources, but you got to get out.
What is my echo chamber exactly?
Yeah, huge. Yeah, that's the problem.
What is
you gotta
it?
Get out.
So, but I was aware of the 215 year viewpoint. I'm asking, where do I find this non-echo chamber resource that has your viewpoint?
Commentaries.
Which one? Name one.
I would try Gil. His stuff is good.
Gil.
Gil's with me on the sons of God being men on earth worshiping. He has the same position I do on that. Gil agrees with me a lot. I like a lot of his stuff.
I think when I asked AI or something about that opinion, it said there was a few people that had that opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Just no one had the opinion. No one had the opinion that Jesus Christ was like, performing sacrifices in Salem from the creation of the world until Abraham appears.
Well,
so that was a very
that
specific to McMurtry doctrine there.
No, that's not even my doctrine. That's just me saying if a high priest was always necessary. And then said with Melchizedek, I can preach it either way. I don't know. It's like I can preach it was Jesus. I can preach it wasn't. I don't know. I've got a whole host of theories and possibilities.
Your wife's saying that I'm lying. I want to make sure, what am I lying about? Did you not come on my show, The Baptist Bias, and I asked you explicitly if Jesus Christ was performing sacrifices at the time of creation, then what would happen during the flood? And you said he could have left. Did that not happen?
Right.
Am I denying reality?
And you guys completely missed it, because here's the thing too. God made many appearances on earth. I don't believe he was just always here.
Answer the question.
Yes.
Did that happen? Yes or no?
Yes, and you misunderstood me. You totally misunderstood what I said and misrepresented what I was trying to say.
So you were not saying that Jesus was there.
When it came to Melchizedek, okay? Even if according to my position, he was always necessary, and I don't know. But even if he was, I don't believe Jesus would have been here all the time. I think he made special appearances like he did with Abraham, like he did, and things like that. So I don't think he would have been living on earth this entire time. I think if it was necessary for Melchizedek, and if it was always Jesus, I think whenever he was needed, he would make an appearance on earth. But I don't think he was always here. So me saying he could have left, I don't understand why that was so weird, because again, I don't, when God made many appearances, we would all agree on earth.
We could go back and roll the tape, but it seemed pretty clear that you said that he was ruling and reigning in Salem for a long period of time.
I said,
Pastor Anderson asked you explicitly, how far would you roll back the clock? And you basically rolled it all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And then I said, well, if he was there in Salem for that entire period of time, what would have happened during the flood?
I don't think I'm saying if he's a king, he's reigning over something. And so what is he reigning over? Well, he's king of Salem.
Again, I think lots of people believe that Jesus Christ would have
If
been
it's
coming
Jesus,
and going in his Old Testament appearances. Like I have no problem with that. Obviously, Jesus Christ is
so then we're in
ascending and
agreement.
descending,
So then we're in agreement.
but I'm saying he's not in Salem performing sacrifices and being the king for this extended period of time that you were suggesting.
Well, again, I don't even know for sure that it's Jesus. If it was, I still don't think he would have always been on earth. I think he would have appeared when he needed to be. I think he would have had servants and people he could have given orders to, and they would have done whatever they were doing. But even if it wasn't, if it's a man, then yeah, he would have been here a normal lifetime or whatever. But again, it's one of those things I don't know. So that's why, again, when somebody says something,
But wait a minute, am I misrepresenting you when I say you said, hey, Jesus Christ could have been in the temple, wherever Temple Zero was or wherever Salem was, performing sacrifices, and when the flood came, you said he could have left. I'm misrepresenting you?
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say. Because again, do you believe that when God met with Abraham, that he lived a normal lifetime on this earth to make that appearance, or that he left and went back to heaven after that?
Well, again, I'm not really of a strong opinion on Melchizedek, whether it was an Old Testament appearance of Jesus or if it was just a regular person. But if it was an Old Testament appearance of Jesus, which I believe that and taught that in the past, I would think it would just be the same day, just kind of like a Manoah appearance or something where he's there. Even then, he does. It seems like there's a sacrifice performed, and then he ascends up. Obviously, when he wrestles with Jacob, it seems like it's just kind of a day, like it's just a day, and then he goes back up. So to me, what I was taking offense with and was arguing with you on the show for probably like 20 minutes or 30 minutes was about it being more than a day, and it being this period of reign where Jesus Christ is reigning over Salem, and you clearly said that in your show, on my show. And we're defending that position.
Well, I threw out a whole bunch of possibilities, but on all of them, I said, I don't really know. Now here's what I said too. I said, first off, when it comes to this subject of Melchizedek, here's the way I typically explain it too. If it's Jesus, then we would assume this and this and this. If it's not Jesus, so I've given scenarios for the different possibilities. That's not me taking a position on those things. So the problem is, you guys are coming at it with an added idea. It's not Jesus. And therefore, if I'm thinking it's Jesus, then that would mean, he's living on earth this long extended period of time. And again, if it was necessary, I guess he could have, but I don't.
Okay, so your wife clarified. Apparently, I had said something like Jesus was surfing in the flood, and I was misrepresenting you. Yes. Okay, obviously, it was a joke. But okay,
what about the?
I just want to clarify, because I don't want to lie about people, even if I don't like them. But I appreciate you letting me just confront you on these issues. I got to go. Make your video to prove all the references I'm missing on the children of Israel not being biological. I'll watch that video and respond to it. So, thanks for your time.
All right, I'll go. I'm going to try to as fast as I can, because this has already been long. I'm going to try to
your audience.
Anderson's thing.
Your audience all says I'm unsaved and hates me. So bye. Have a good day.
Who says you're unsaved? Oh, okay. All right. Hey, that wasn't a dumpster fire. I think it went pretty good, but we spent a lot of time on that. And so now I want to see, in the past, when I did this, I didn't go through Pastor Anderson's article, because again, I don't think this is something really worth getting contentious over. And if you start naming names, people get bent out of shape. But, since Shelley brought it up and named me, it's like, and I know he got his teaching from Anderson on this, I figure, well, let's go ahead and go to the new IFB source on this and see what it says. So from the beginning, reading in Anderson's words, from the beginning of the sojourn of the children of Israel in Egypt to the day they left Egypt equals 430 years. Now, this is where we lose the so-called Bible scholars and theologians who do not take the Bible for what it actually says. Now, come on, man. Sometimes people disagree. You can be a Bible believer and just maybe you account for something different. But all right. But then Exodus 12:40. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. These verses could not be any clearer in telling us that the children of Israel sojourned in Egypt for exactly 430 years to the very day. Now, I want to point, and this is me talking, I want to point out some words that it got at. It doesn't say they sojourned in Egypt for 430 years. It says the sojourning was 430 years of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt, or those children of Israel, in my words, who were dwelling in Egypt, which is exactly what they have been doing for the last 215 years. I believe that's what we're seeing there, is that it's their sojourning, the sojourning of the children of Israel, the people who were dwelling in Egypt, their sojourning was 430 years. And I think it includes Abraham and Isaac, and I'll show examples of that later. But he goes on to say, yet almost every chart, book, or chronology you look at will show them being there for only a little over 200 years. That's true. That is absolutely true. This is simply a denial of what the Bible clearly states in Exodus 12. The way they reconcile this is by starting the clock on the 430 years back when Abraham received the covenant from God, 85 years before Israel was ever even born. How could the children, plural, of Israel be in their sojourn in Egypt 85 years before their father was even born? The other method so-called Bible scholars and theologians use to deny Exodus 12, 40, and 41 is simply to say it was a scribal error, mistake in the Bible, and that it should read 215 years. So he goes on, every word of God is pure. He is a shield in them that put their trust in him. Add thou not to his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. Let's look at the evidence. And he's Genesis 15, 13, he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, and also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with very great substance. Now, very interesting here where he ended the scripture. Why would he do this when a time statement is given right after that? Shouldn't this help us understand the timeline? Because in verse 15, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. 4 generations, which is what we see in the genealogies too. We see that's important right there. Why did he stop in verse 15 and 16? It's going to give a time statement, and he leaves that out because the 4th generation lines up with the genealogies that we see. So, and I'm going to show too that even the way they interpret that they had to be afflicted for 400 years by the Egyptians in Egypt, that's impossible too. Even according to Anderson's timeline, that's impossible. So Genesis 15:15. I already read that. Back to Anderson's words, Acts 7:6. And God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage and entreat them evil 400 years. And the nation to whom they shall be in bondage will I judge, said God. And after that they shall come forth and serve me in this place. Notice it said, this is me talking, his seed. Well, wouldn't that include Isaac? Because again, Isaac is a part of this covenant and promise. And the people who hold to the 215-year idea all agree that the affliction of Abraham's seed from Egypt began with the affliction of Ishmael on Isaac, who represented the people of Israel, who is going to be the heir of this promise that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name he changed to Israel. So in Genesis 12:10, still me speaking, and there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. Abraham is a sojourner. In Acts 19, you see Lot sojourning in Sodom, and they said, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Because again, when you're a sojourner, when you're a stranger, you don't have authority. You don't have possession in the land. You dwell there. You're a part of it, but you don't have possession. You don't have authority as a sojourner. And so in Genesis 26:1, it says, there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee, for unto thee and thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father, and I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, my laws, and Isaac dwelt in Gerar. So basically what we're seeing in the Bible is that while God promised to make Abraham a great nation, and while God promised him a land in Genesis 15, it took 430 years, plus the 40 years there in the wilderness, of Abraham and his seed sojourning before the land would become a reality. Because when it was Abraham and all of his house, the hundreds in his house, that was the people of that covenant, the people of the promise, sojourning in the land. When it's Isaac, same thing, the entire people of that covenant. Okay. And what Anderson does is he makes Israel, that has to exclude, that can only be the physical descendants of Israel, the man, rather than the people of the covenants and promises that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I say they're all connected. And there's some interesting verses that kind of bear with that. We'll see in a little bit. But these are Anderson's words here. The preceding scriptures state that the children of Israel will be afflicted or evil entreated by the Egyptians for 400 years. The sojourn of the children of Israel in Egypt was exactly 430 years to the very day, according to Exodus 12. Therefore, we can conclude that they were treated well for the first 30 years they were in Egypt. At that point, the Egyptians began to entreat them evil. Then later, after Joseph died, a new Pharaoh ascended the throne. The children of Israel were put into full-blown bondage. So Anderson wants to start the clock of the affliction after the death of Joseph for the 400 years of being evil afflicted. That does not work. Okay. This thing I love about math, it's absolute. But from the time of God's covenant with Abraham to Jacob going into Egypt, it's easy to prove, and even Anderson agrees, it was 215 years. So here's a big question. How old was Joseph when, according to Anderson, the 430 years started? Well, Jacob was 130 when he went into Egypt. That's stated in Genesis 47, verse 9. And then in Genesis 41:46 tells us Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And then in Genesis 45:6, after his brethren show up, he says, for these 2 years have the famine been in the land, and there are 5 years in which there should be neither earing or harvest. So when Joseph's brothers appeared, it was 9 years later. So let's round up. Joseph is 40 when the 430-year clock would have started, according to Anderson. But in Genesis 50:26, Joseph died being 110 years old. And so when Joseph died, there's only 360 years left. But it's not until after Joseph that the affliction starts. Exodus 1:8, now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And then he was concerned about how they were multiplying. And so he made them, their lives bitter in hard bondage. So even according to Anderson's theory, you can't have, if he thinks the affliction has to be on the people in Egypt during the, after Jacob goes in, after the death of Joseph, that's still only 360 years. That's so, that does it at the most, because the king that rises is one that didn't know Joseph. I don't know how long that would have taken. I'm not even going to guess, but at the maximum, 360 years is all they could have done, according to Anderson. So that doesn't work. So back to Anderson's word. Does the teaching that the children of Israel in Egypt for only 215 years jive with Genesis 15 and Acts 7? Absolutely not. It would be impossible for them to be afflicted in Egypt for 400 years if there were only 250 years. Well, it's also impossible according to Anderson's theory as well. So Anderson says, does the Bible's clear teaching in Genesis 12 teach that the children of Israel were in Egypt for 430 years jive with Genesis 15, Acts 7? Yes. I would say, well, it wouldn't if we read it the way Anderson does, who kind of adds words. If we read it exactly as written and account for it the way God does, then it does jive, the 215 years. Anderson, though, insists, as an American, that the children of Israel can only mean physical descendants of Israel, the man. What he is missing and isn't accounting for is that all these things that has taken place with Israel is connected to Abraham and Isaac as well, because Israel, the man, is the one who received the inheritance and the promises that God gave to Abraham that went to Isaac. You can't separate Abraham and Isaac from the people of Israel. Hebrews 7:8. And here men that die receive tithes, but there he receiveth them of whom it is witness that he liveth. And I may so say, Levi also, who received tithes, paid tithes in Abraham, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. So if Levi is in the loins of his father and can be credited for tithing to Melchizedek, then couldn't the children of Israel be credited for the affliction from Ishmael since they were in the loins of their father, Isaac? Because again, we think of Isaac as just a regular guy too, but he was a very special person who had received a very special promise. I mean, he's a very significant figure. And so often in the Bible, when addressing the nation or children of Israel, it would also include the names of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were all one people under the same covenant with the same promises. Hebrews 11:9, by faith, he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs of the same promise. You can't separate those guys as a people of a covenant and a promise. They all had the same thing. God made it with Abraham, and it went to Isaac, not Ishmael, or the sons of Keturah. It went to Jacob, not Esau. God made different nations with them. But these guys, they were all sojourners. And so from the time God made that covenant and promise with Abraham, 430 years later is when they came out of Egypt. And so back to Anderson's words. Now let's look at both places where the 430 years are mentioned. He has Exodus 12, 40, and 41 again, and in Galatians 3:16. Now watch what he does here, people. This is incredible. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, into thy seed, which is Christ. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul that it should make the promise of none effect. The Bible, this is Anderson, the Bible is not saying in Galatians 3:17 that the covenant was made with Abraham 430 years before the giving of the law by Moses. It's saying that the covenant was confirmed 430 years before the giving of the law. This confirmation of the promise made to Abraham that he would be made a great nation is recorded in Genesis 47, 3 and 4. And that's where it goes into, looks like I think that might be a typo there. I think it's Genesis 46. And it says, and he said, I am God of thy father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will surely bring thee up again. And Joseph put his hand upon his eyes, and Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, and their little ones, and their wives, and their wagons, which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. Okay, now, let me finish Anderson's thing. Since the law was given by Moses the same year the children of Israel left Egypt, this lines up perfectly with Exodus 12. Therefore, the children of Israel sojourned in the land of Egypt exactly 430 years. Okay, now, notice what he did here. He included a story that wasn't even referenced in Galatians. He just inserted it in there. And he had to change the subject of Galatians in order to do this. Now, this is why it's a bad idea to go to the Bible looking for proof of something you've already decided is true, rather than reading the Bible and letting it tell you what is true. Because in Galatians 4, okay, let's forget about the timeline argument. He is showing how Abraham was saved by faith without the works of the law. In fact, it's showing Abraham got saved in Genesis 15, 430 years before the law. That was the point, showing that the law is not necessary for salvation. It's faith, because it was in Genesis 15, Abraham believed the Lord and he counted it to him for righteousness. That's what it's talking about. It's showing salvation, the salvation of Abraham 430 years before the law. That is the point of Galatians. Anderson changes the subject and inserts a story in there. It actually does refer to, the Genesis 15 doesn't refer to Genesis 46 or 47. Jacob's not mentioned in there. Anderson just inserts him into the story. Anderson has declared that event, the confirmation of it, rather than Genesis 15, even though in Genesis 12, God told Abraham he was going to make of him a great nation. But it was in Genesis 15 when God actually made the covenant and he cut the calf in twain and the lamp passed between the pieces of it. That's when that was confirmed. Genesis 12, a promise is given, confirmed in chapter 15. He's not confirming the Abrahamic covenant in that story with Jacob. Now he is verifying the fact that he is going to bring them out of Egypt after they go in there. He is promising that, but he didn't give a timeline. There, Anderson just inserts that story, and it doesn't work. And Galatians right there proves it. Galatians, Paul is showing how the promise that Abraham believed and was saved by came 430 years before the law. That's what Galatians is talking about. Anderson turned it into a proof text about his timeline, and it fails. But yet, this is now new IFB dogma. And so I believe the affliction of Abraham's seed started with Ishmael persecuting Isaac. No, it's got to be the children of Israel. They were in the loins of Isaac. So sorry, that's how the Bible accounts for things. And I've got so much. I did not want to go this long on this, but most of the stuff that I could say, go back and watch my other thing that I did on it. I was pretty detailed on there. But yeah, I think on here, and again, because you can do the same thing. They ignore the fourth generation. After the fourth generation, I'm going to bring you on. Said if it's just biological descendants, you're not going from 70 to 600,000 in 4 generations. That's going to be a crazy birth rate. If they insist on doing that, I mean, maybe in 430 years. But again, I think it's clear that's not the case. Isaac, for sure, gave all of his servants. We have to factor in the servants. And so they're not doing that. But again, this isn't something I would split hairs over, but I think it's important simply for our dispensational brethren who insist on continuing to make everything involving Israel a genetic thing. It never was. It was the many people, Abraham's entire house was circumcised. They were a part of the covenant that God made with Abraham. And they were a part of his house. They were under his authority. They were not all necessarily heirs of certain things. And yes, certain promises were for sure focused on the that were focused on certain genetic things because God specified those things. But being of the nation was never strictly a genetic thing. But anyway, I don't even really know what else to say about that. But either way, I look forward to finding out all the just horrific heresies this can lead to if you think that not everybody that came out of Egypt was a genetic descendant of Jacob. I don't think that. I don't think that. I think the fact that the servants were included, it helps. It makes sense of why we had such large numbers, even after 215 years. And so that is my position on it. As far as what Shelley is demanding, that I show commentaries, showing other people accounting for that, I might take the time to do that, to see if there's other people who've factored that in. I have a really hard time imagining that's not the case, considering every timeline has 215 years. I was trying to find one that was 430 years. Somebody told me the SBC says 430 years. That's their position, but like all of it, I mean, I'm sure they would allow for some disagreement on that. But this Reese Chronological Bible, it uses the timeline from the chronology of the Bible, and it has 215 years. Again, most things that you see out there today that have dates and it says BC, whatever, however they record it, they will typically reference the chronology of the Bible, or they will reference Usher. And Usher was from back in the 1600s. And again, yeah. And, and Jack House is right. No matter what I say, Shelley will disagree with my question. It's what he does. I know. And he needs me to be a weirdo. Now, I'm fine with that because people he has influence over, I prefer to keep them away from our church. And fortunately, I'm not seeing the new IFB anymore have any sway with normal people. So I'm not real worried about that. Also, too, if you can demonize somebody for their position on the timeline of the children of Israel in Egypt, they're, if that works, they're weird. We're going to divide over something else for sure. Or they're going to divide with me over something else for sure. So we probably, I don't need to do that, but I'm sorry. I was not able to pay attention to comments and things. Most of what I saw was everybody fighting with Ben the Baptist on there. And, that was not necessarily helpful. I have added some cool sound effects that I've been wanting to use on a special occasion too. If I do have any dumpster fire interviews, or if I get backed into a corner and I can't answer for something, like during a debate, I've got these great sound effects of responses that I can give to people like this.
You disgusting piece of filth, you punk.
Can y'all hear that okay?
Nobody cares about you. You're pathetic. You are a loser. You are valueless. You are so valueless and such a piece of filth. Nobody cares about you.
And this is my favorite one.
You worshiper of Satan. You worshiper of Satan. You piece of anti-God, subhuman filth.
Now, thankfully, with this conversation, it was very civil tonight. It went very well. I didn't need to use any of those, but I am prepared for any real challenges. If I get backed into a corner, if I get stumped, if I'm made to look stupid, I've got my Ben the Baptist responses that I can use that will just shut down any opposition that I have. And so I wouldn't mess with me in the future, folks. Otherwise, you're getting Ben the Baptist, and I'm having fun with him. I will say about Ben the Baptist, he was man enough to have me on his program, and it was definitely a dumpster fire, but he still had me on the program and let me say what I had to say. And so that was fun. Are they too quiet? Or I can crank them up too, but I've got a bunch. I like this one too. Anybody messes with me?
I would hope that God strikes you down right now. I've been praying imprecatory prayers against you.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll scare him right there too. I got this one too. This is the one I like for whenever people I have guests on, they say something good.
That's good preaching.
Tony Hudson. But I will end with one more sound effect. This is one directed at me for my performance tonight. And thank you very much. I appreciate the applause. I appreciate everybody joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, we ain't changing. I've got to get that one on there. I've definitely got to get that one on there. But this is why this is the podcast everyone's talking about. We are not afraid to have opposition come on, no matter how much hatred people have for me, no matter how much they say, all that. We are not afraid to have them on. And we still had a civil discussion. Still no dumpster fires on the Spirit of Prophecy podcast, because you know what we do? We treat everybody fair. We get to the heart of the issue. That is why people love this program. If you're looking for dumpster fires and that kind of entertainment, this isn't the place to go. I know another podcast you can go to. It's not this one. But if you're looking for conversations where we get to the heart of the issue, and this is what it comes down to, okay? I believe that Shelley and Anderson and all the new IFB believe the Bible. Okay, let's not be Ruckmanites. You just don't believe the Bible. I believe they believe the Bible. I believe they account for certain things in the scriptures differently than what the Bible intends. And I believe when they are looking at the children of Israel, they are thinking only in terms of genetic descendants, physical descendants of Jacob. I disagree with that. I think servants are included in there. When it comes to the sojourning of the children of Israel, I believe the sojourning of Abraham and Isaac, who the children of Israel were in the loins of, because they were a part of the same house under the same authority, I believe that counted for their time. And it's same thing with the affliction. When Ishmael is afflicting Isaac and they're in the loins of Isaac, that's them being afflicted by Ishmael, who came from an Egyptian woman. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So we just account for things different. That's all there is to it. And no, Brother Ben, I can't play that video. Shelley behaved himself on here, and so I'm sorry. I cannot. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be mean. And I wasn't trying to make fun of Ben. I love that I love that video of him letting Todd Ferguson have it. And Todd Ferguson, he used to, if you don't know him, he used to call here and harass me and bug me. And he was making some videos directed at Ben's wife, and that was out of line. And he had a right to tell him off. I'm not mad at him for the video. I still think it's funny. And I love those sound effects. So Ben, I'm not trying to make fun of you, but I do love these powerful sound effects, and I think they're powerful.
You're a disgusting filth. You're a piece of filth. You are a punk. You're a loser. You're a psychopath.
That's powerful. It's a powerful argument there. And I think it will work great if anybody ever backs me up in the corner. And I didn't have to use it on Pastor Shelley once tonight. But either way, that's enough fun there. But thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you all next time. God bless.